Sanjay. Thank you so much for joining us today. In fact, it's our honor and a privilege to have you on our first ever podcast. And on a very special day, I did not mention this to you earlier. Today happens to be the 10th anniversary of Lexi Ventures Private Limited. And I think it's an auspicious, great beginning for us to have you on the podcast. So, a very warm welcome.
So thank you, Shailesh. I was just telling my wife this morning that I'm doing this podcast. Actually, it's a first of sorts for me also.
Okay.
First time I'm recording a podcast.
Okay.
I've done conversations and fireside chats earlier, but
Sure.
this first for me. And then I was reminiscing and saying, my association with Shailesh goes now more than 40 years. So it makes us both look, or not 40, but
30,
30 years.
33 years.
Sorry,
Yeah.
30 years. I got the
91.
math a little wrong there.
Right.
So more than 30 years. And when
Right.
you think about it, it's a long association. So I'm just happy to happy to be on this.
And I couldn't really think of anybody else to do the first episode for us. So thank you so much, Sanjay. And for the benefit of the audience, I would love to hear from you, your journey and your current organization, how you got here. So I'm sure the audience would love to know.
So I'll start with a quick educational background. I'm an engineer and an MBA.
Okay.
Everyone at home teases me that I've done my engineering, but I've never used my engineering, as an engineer.
Yeah.
So, but I think the fundamentals that you learn in an engineering college and in hostel, I think those lessons
Hostel more importantly, I guess.
Yeah, those are far more important than anything else.
Absolutely.
And then I've worked for about 35 years. I consider myself a consumer marketer at heart. So that's where my my interests lie. And from a work perspective, I work with Nerolac paints. I work with Asian Paints, with Cadbury, with Levis, and now with Sapphire Foods. And we are a large franchisee and run KFC and Pizza Hut restaurants. So I say in work, there are three things that interest me most. One is I think I'm a classical marketing person, and therefore helping brands grow consumption is a big area of joy for me. The second part is, how do you drive execution excellence? And I think it's an art and a science.
Sure.
How do you drive outstanding execution? And the third area of passion is, how do you build great organizations, great teams with shared values, shared culture? And when you said that your podcast covers many of these areas, I said, let me put my hand up and say, I'm most happy to do it.
Yeah, Sanjay, in fact, you know me well. So I've been most of the time or almost all my career an operations guy. And I'm now working in the HR space because that happens to be a passion for me. And I think it would be a great help for a lot of people trying to build new organizations and build new teams. And that's the purpose and the objective of this podcast. So help me with your leadership style and how you build so many wonderful. You talked about Cadburys, you talked about Levi's, you now with Sapphire, you build large organizations. Just take us through that journey.
So before that, I must give you a little bit of context about why I came to where I am today.
Sure.
And, what is the career choice that pushed me to get into Sapphire Foods? So I worked with large organizations for a large portion of my career, where, large companies like Asian Paints, multinationals like Cadbury, Levi's. And I realized that as you grow more senior in such organizations, they're great, places to learn and to get exposure to scale and size and so on. But the more senior that you get into such organizations, the bureaucracy and essential risk averseness, I think, got to me as a person.
I hear you loud and clear. Absolutely.
I feel I'm a little more of a risk taker. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and therefore, after a really good, successful stint at Levi's, I was looking for an opportunity to become what I call a professional entrepreneur. And
Right.
there is where I teamed up with a private equity firm to buy over different franchisees who used to operate KFC and Pizza Hut stores. And
Okay.
we set up Sapphire Foods, and I came on board.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at this in multiple ways. One is, so the food space interests me, and I think the food QSR space in any case is a multi-decade opportunity. So the opportunity
Absolutely.
interested me. The second part is, we were a loss-making business, not doing well. So there was a turnaround opportunity that appealed to the sort of go-getter in me. I
Absolutely.
think the third part was the most important part was I could perhaps build an organization and a culture in my own image. And Shailesh, this was the biggest attraction of coming into Sapphire Food. So while we've got a promoter, they're largely, I would say, in a sense, financial investors.
Right.
Consider myself this professional entrepreneur. Now, I gave you this as a backdrop to the question that you asked me on leadership style. And here, I want to keep things as simple as possible. So I feel that, in a sense, leadership is all about getting people to follow you, to perhaps listen to you, and go along with what your, say, vision might be or what your aspiration might be. So now, if you want people to follow you, and with their hearts and their minds, then in many ways, their behaviors and what their intrinsic value systems must align with the leader's value systems.
Absolutely. I
And
completely agree.
hence, for the first time in my life, when I came to Sapphire Foods, I actually thought, what is my leadership style?
Mm-hmm.
And the conclusion that I came to is that I try and lead my life by 5 values that I wrote down. And I'll talk about those
Awesome.
in
Yeah,
a,
please, please. Would
in
love
a
to know.
and
Yeah.
for good or for bad. So the first thing that I did when I joined the organization was to tell people that this is how I lead my life.
Yeah.
Now, for good or for bad, I'm saying this to you, that the organization culture starts at the very top and therefore starts with me. And hence, if you all don't resonate with these values, in a sense, there's no place for you at Sapphire Foods. But if you resonate with these values, I think we all can grow together and we all can do incredible things. And I also said to them, in the past, I've seen these 5 values, they're powerful. They drive everyday behavior. So they are a guide to drive everyday behavior. And when all of us, in a sense, align to these values, whether we articulate them or not, it doesn't make a difference. In our
Absolutely.
hearts, whether we believe in them and we live our lives according to them, if all of us believe that, this will be demonstrated in everyday behavior, and this will be the culture of the organization. So my leadership style, in a sense, is simple. The 5 values that I talk about are the values of excellence, which is drive yourself to be in a sense, better version of yourself every day. So
Absolutely.
I'm looking at traits of humility. I'm looking at traits of passion. I'm looking at traits of curiosity, people who want to learn, people who want to grow, have a drive in their, in their stomach to do something impactful. The second value that I
True.
talk about is courage, which
Mm-hmm.
is, if you want to do great things, often you're swimming against the tide. So do you have that grit? Do you have that resilience to be able to swim against the tide and succeed?
Yeah, this reminds me about the comfort zone and then getting out of the comfort zone into the fear zone and the growth zone. I think I really understand that where you're coming from.
So the third value that I talk about is the value of integrity. And my definition of integrity is not financial integrity, but do you have a moral compass that says that I'll do the right thing even when no one is looking?
Okay.
The fourth value that I talk about is empathy. And empathy means many things. It means, first of all, at its core, respect for human beings and respect for the environment that we work in, and affording in all our relationships a certain amount of dignity, and the word again, respect. So how do you work with people? How do you collaborate with people? I say in the organization, I want prima donnas, in the sense people who are outlier performers, but not people who behave like prima donnas. People have to be able to get along with each other. And the fifth value that I talk about is accountability. And accountability is really personal ownership.
Right.
And saying that no excuses, execution. So often, you will find people saying that, Shailesh, I was not able to do this job because I was dependent on person B.
Yeah, yeah.
And that person B didn't do his role, so what can I do?
It's
So
externalizing or giving reasons for non-performance.
So
I
these are
completely agree.
things that are, so in a sense, long answer. So forgive me for that. So
No, absolutely.
So I said my leadership style, I gave the context, and then I said 5 values. And in reality, over the 8 years that I've been here now at Sapphire Foods, I think this is people recognize this leadership style. This leads to everyday behavior. This leads to the culture of the organization, by and large.
Sanjay, unarguably, the values are the foundation of the culture in any organization. But what I'm really curious about is what you mentioned earlier, is that when you set up Sapphire Foods, you brought 10 different franchises together, right? And it was a loss-making business at that point of time. So what were your challenges? So when you get people from different cultures, when you talk about different franchises, I would obviously understand that there would be different kind of value systems and cultures in those franchises. What were your challenges and how did you get this? So having values in one, getting them to be aligned with the entire team. How did you go about doing that?
So correctly you said, the biggest challenge was 8 different franchises we bought and melded it together. Therefore,
Correct.
8 different cultures.
Correct.
And hence it was important for me from day one to say, this is how I lead my life. And I'm telling you all today that amongst you all, many of you might resonate, some of you might not resonate. And therefore, over a period of time, through hiring, through firing, and through a performance management system, people who will be on this journey for a long period of time will be people who believe in this value. So the immediate steps is to get the right leadership team in place,
okay,
and hire that leadership team in place, hire their second rung,
correct,
build in a performance management system that evaluates people on some of these values. And I think the most important thing, separate people who don't conform to these values.
align and conform. Okay.
And
okay.
I think most of the people in the organization, see, in the belly of the organization, people know when a specific person is a bastard or doesn't collaborate or purposely tries to bring down the dignity of a human being. So
Correct.
then they're looking at the leader and saying, in these tough times, is the leader taking a decision to say to this person, you have to go? I have found that those decisions are the ones that help build culture the best. And finally, all of this, I do a lot of storytelling.
Awesome.
I do
Share
a lot
some
of
stuff. So if you can elaborate, because I see one of the things, and I'll just take a minute. When you talked about values and you talked about hiring people, and then the entire value system and the culture cascading down the line, communication plays a very important, open, transparent communication, as they put it. But how transparent? How open? What is there a boundary to it? And how do you manage that open and transparent communication? And therefore, your storytelling, and how do you do that?
So it's as open and transparent as possible. So really, there are no holds barred.
Okay.
That's number one. Of course, from a financial perspective, there you have got to be just, I'm saying, careful about what transmits right across. When we were a privately listed company, we could do financial information that is different. Today, as a publicly listed company, in my
Correct.
in my conversations is different. But I think that communication really is through storytelling. See, there are always instances in the company's life where these values are tested. And when they are tested, how do you react to it? So I'll give you an example during COVID. So during COVID, this is the first time in my life, all our stores were closed and a daily sales report said 0 sales. I mean, I've never ever faced it in 35 years of work. Never ever faced it, but so it's a big one. Now we had 10,000 employees, many of them are team members. Stores were closed. So we were having a really good year in March 2020. And I remember on 3rd March, I had a town hall where I said to people that actually this might be a breakthrough year for us.
Okay.
We're having our best possible year, is what I said to them on 3rd of March, anticipating that by 31st of March, if things went as they did, we would have had a good year. By
21st, 22nd, around 20th,
And those 12 days of closure caused havoc, and we had a big issue. And then from a profitable company, in the next 3 months, we saw losses. And we didn't have the capital. All our capital was being put into expanding stores. So suddenly, when all of a sudden capital dried up, so we had perhaps enough capital to last us 1 or 2 or 3 months. Now, 10,000 employees, 90% of them are not productive. So what is the call that you take? So I think we were among the only people in our industry where we said we continued to support our team members in April, May. Then in June, when by middle of May, we started opening restaurants, at least for delivery. Then we started to talk to people. You have to come back to a store and show us that you are, we had got all the police permissions and et cetera, to open the store. And so we helped support team members despite, and I know the financial burden. I know that we'll run out of money and so on.
Yeah, right.
The right thing to do is during that period of time, not to abandon the team. all of us took pay cuts. It's quite interesting. I had a town hall in early April, and I knew the answer to the question that I posed to 500-600 people, saying that these are the two options in front of us, that I can ask 25-30% of people amongst us to go, or we could take salary cuts. What would you think we should do? So you know the answer. Everyone
Obviously.
said, let's take salary cuts, but not not ensure that anyone loses the job. So I think so we did the right thing at that time. Shailesh, I must say I had enormous pressure from our investors, because they were looking at suddenly, where will this money come from? We were able to scrimp and scrounge and get a bank loan at exorbitant interest rates. So we managed all of that. But we kept the team intact. And perhaps our investors would have said, we were a private listed company, cut. And I said, no, nothing. This is the right thing to do. And then in July, August, when things started to turn around, and this team that we had built, and which had looked at the decisions that we took to keep everyone around, that team delivered incredibly. Our business changed, our profitability changed, everything changed. Those 3 or 4 months of trauma that we had, when we started to come out of that, I think we had the best performance amongst all companies in our industry. So I think that's the part. So the moral compass of my team and me said, this is the right thing to do. We'll figure out the money part and so on. We'll figure out our investors. So this is the storytelling that perpetuates a certain culture. Or like I said, I think my biggest calls have been to ask people to go in my leadership. And then the word gets around that this person was asked to go not because of performance, because of the way that they behaved and they dealt with people. So I think that forms part of culture.
So with all this, I'm sure you used HR as a very strategic partner in this journey. So, and I ask you this question because a lot of times people look at HR as just another support function. What's your personal view around HR as a strategic person, and how does it pan out in your organization?
So I think every function is strategic. HR is just as strategic as any other function. The role of setting the people agenda is the CEO's role. He is actually the super HR, the super people leader in the organization. Like I said,
absolutely,
culture starts from top.
Yeah.
So in this case, my responsibility, I have to walk the talk and set in values and culture and behaviors that I believe the organization should follow. The HR team is very important in being able to disseminate this culture right across. So absolutely. How does it come to life in performance management? How does it come to life in the way that we grow and develop our people? What is how do our rewards and recognition align with this? Then feedback mechanisms to understand whether this is a culture that we are trying to drive, but actually on the ground, is it so? What are people saying? And do you have listening mechanisms that tell you where you're going right and where you're going wrong? So I think bringing it to life is where
HR plays a role.
People function plays a huge role. In policies, So
Yeah.
people must see policies also not as a document of rules and regulations, but
Yeah.
as a guideline to say what
It's a
is
framework. Yeah.
the framework.
So, Sanjay, you mentioned COVID, and one of the things that really came to the forefront during COVID and post COVID more so was employee well being. And this is not just about the professional well being of another employee, but as well as physical, mental, emotional well being. So, what's your organization's take on that? How do you support your employees on that front?
So a large, I recognize that there are, I recognize that employee well-being, so individual well-being is a large topic,
Yeah.
and we have to recognize that organization can play a specific role in this well-being, and we must not think of ourselves as being able to influence everything. So what are the specific roles that we can play? The specific roles that we can play is, how do we give a work environment to an individual that is fair, that is open, transparent, and enabling?
Correct.
And where opinions matter, where a person is being able to be heard. And how can your policies be transparent, known to everyone, and as, in a sense, friendly as they could be.
And
So,
supportive. Yeah.
and supportive as they could be. So I think so this is the efforts that we take. So is our culture great? Is our work environment great? Do people feel empowered? Are our policies fair, transparent, as supportive as our financials allow us? Is our remuneration policy as fair and transparent as possible?
Correct.
So I think these are the areas that an organization can influence. Now there might be other areas, but
Well, I'm
perhaps.
sure. But I guess all of this put together creates that sense of belongingness. And I think that's very critical for organizations and really entrepreneurs to understand and relate to, is that unless the team feels that sense of belongingness, all the other things that you talked about, they won't really align with it. So I think that's where employee well-being comes into play. You talked about rewards and recognition. Can you share some practices that you have at Sapphire?
So the recognition, framework is quite strong at Sapphire Foods, and we lean on some of our franchisors' practices also a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Yum Brands has also a really good recognition policy. So the store recognition policy is really the framework of everything that we do. And good work is almost continuously called out and recognized. So the store manager almost is pushed to look at his team members and see many of his team members might be 10th, 12th pass.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So it starts from our stores, recognition of good work. So when people go beyond the call of duty, they're called out, and it might be a small slab of chocolate that is given to them and a certificate. And I think that we then carry through to our corporate offices. I think many people would have similar recognition programs at the corporate office. I think at the store level, this emphasis on recognition, and therefore when I go and see the notice board in a store. I think it's quite strong there.
Mhm.
It is to make a person feel valued and good work to be patted on the back.
Definitely. I think, and it makes it that much more difficult in the kind of organization or the kind of sector you are in, where you have multiple stores spread across a large geography, and therefore kind of ensuring the consistency across this particular diverse spread must be pretty challenging. So, do you have a reward and recognition structure or a program, or do you also kind of empower your teams to do impromptu things in their stores?
So, at the corporate level, it is structured. We've got every quarter, when I do a town hall every quarter, then there is recognition for the corporate office. But the corporate office for me is 600 people out of 12,000 or 13,000. Really, the action is at our stores. And at our stores, people must feel recognized. So there is a structure driven by our training people and our HR people in the field that calls out champions. That's quite strong. And apart from that, spontaneous recognition
Sure. Yeah.
is all encouraged. And, through again, the process of example or seeing someone do it, the restaurant general manager, as we call the store manager, the restaurant manager, he would have been a team member. He would have got recognized. He understands the power of recognition.
Absolutely.
So, for example, when any person going to the store, say an operations manager or the regional head, or if I go to a store, the end of my store visit is always recognition. Now, I'm looking at how it used to be in my previous retail experiences. Not necessarily you closed a visit by saying, this team member, I want to recognize you for the quality of food that you serve. This team member, I want to recognize you for the customer experience that you're giving, and so on and so forth. So there is a large part of structured recognition, but the joy is in this spontaneous recognition, and the frequency with which it occurs really perhaps is the DNA of the of the business.
Okay. So next, Sanjay, I come to a very common challenge that people face, and I'm sure you must have seen that in two distinct phases of your career. And when I say two distinct phases, like you mentioned, the professional phase and the professional entrepreneur phase, right? So you work with large organizations like Cadburys, Asian Paints, and so on and so forth, the Levis. Their attracting talent wouldn't have been so much of a challenge. People would have been kind of aspiring to work with brands like this. And then when you moved on to build Sapphire Foods, how did you start attracting talent? What was, obviously, I'm assuming that there would have been great challenges there as well, on that part. What were your strategies, or how did you build that employer brand for your organization?
So you're absolutely right, Shailesh, when you said the biggest challenge in the first 3-4 years was attracting good talent. Yeah. And everyone used to say, who's Sapphire Foods? What is this company about? Yeah. And often your parents and your friends and your relatives make a decision for you. So if your parents say, ye kaisa company hai, unlikely that you will join in. Yeah. It wasn't easy to attract talent. I would say in the beginning, the leadership talent I was able to recruit purely on my earlier reputation. And this is what I say to individuals. This is what I say in my, when I speak to young people. Be careful of the reputation that you're building, because actually you cash in on it. So I cashed in on it 30 years later. When people would have, see, today in today's world, everyone does a reference check on, on the company and the organization. So first, I think the leadership team happened purely, on my own reputation. And in it, and then the reputation of the leadership team who are able to hire their direct reports. But slowly and surely, and it took, I would say, 4, 5, 6 years, the culture of the organization and how we work, stories about that started to get around, certainly in the industry, and then beyond the industry. Once we became a public listed company, the way that we interact with investors also, investors tell the story then to other people, and so on and so forth. So I think today, it goes beyond personal reputation, and it is solely on the basis of how well we do as a company, how secure we are financially, what kind of results that we have got. And I think most importantly, what kind of organization culture we've got. And, small things here come to play. I feel the people who have left us are some of our biggest ambassadors.
True.
Because,
absolutely.
One of the principles we use in HR, that people should leave happily. If they leave happily, they become ambassadors, and they spread the word about Sapphire's culture, to other people. I think it's really, really important. And many people burn bridges with old employees, and vice versa also. I say this is a important, small but very important HR practice that we've got to follow. So I think, and I'll just elaborate now on the culture part. See, finally, what do people require at work? And I'll try and break this down. At the very basic level, do I have the materials and the resources needed to do my job? Am I very clear on what is expected of me, which is objectives and so on? Then it moves to slightly higher order areas, which is, how do I feel at work? So am I recognized? Do my opinions count? Does someone care about me in the organization?
Correct.
Am I aligned with the values of the organization, with what the organization is trying to do? Am I aligned with that?
Right.
And then finally, is this a place where I can grow, I can learn, I can develop myself as a
that's exactly where I was actually coming to in terms of the development.
I'll just complete this page. So I think this is the employer brand, and I think we've got a powerful employer brand. And I'll just close this with a simple. So why do I say we've got a powerful employer brand? Because from day one, or not day one, from 2018, Shailesh, we have done we have used the Gallup employee engagement study, simple set of 12 questions that really give you feedback on what employees are saying. As soon as the Gallup engagement study is done, in my next town hall, I say, these are the things that we do well, but these are the things that you are telling us that we don't do well. And I promise you in the next year, we'll work on this. And we worked on this every year. And sometimes we slip back, sometimes we gain.
Fair enough.
We are among the 88th percentile of all companies Gallup surveys worldwide. So really, that is the culture that we promise to people, and that's our employer brand in a sense.
Awesome. So the important aspect as I see it is that you are focused on building an employer brand, and you are involving your employees through your the Gallup route or any other route to provide you feedback.
Correct.
And you are open to that feedback and then implementing it back so that you constantly see improvement. It's not just the employee satisfaction score, I would believe. I'm sure that improves your employee retention. I'm sure the attrition rates must be also improving over a period of time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, you're saying something.
No, I want to give you an example in this. So one of the questions, so Gallup asked 12 questions.
Right.
To answer those 12 questions, you don't require more than 120 seconds if I'm being charitable. You can answer them in less than
You're rating it 1 to 5, I guess.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. Yeah.
There's one killer question in this. I mean, all 12 are killer, but there's one killer question that I look for, which is a good barometer of how things are working in the organization. And I story tell on this often within the, organization. And the question is somewhat like this, that do I trust my co-workers to deliver quality work? Because that's the question. I mean, if I look back, I look at that question with great amount of detail, and I look at that question at an organization level, and then at function level, at department level. So in essence, what this answer provides you is to say, is the prevailing belief in the organization ki I do great work, but Shailesh is my co-worker. I mean, he does absolutely crap work. Now, actually, it tells you two things. One is, I have an inflated opinion of my work. I don't understand what Shailesh is doing. And lastly, I don't have any way in which, when we have to collaborate and there's conflict, I know how to handle that conflict. This is an area that we have worked on hugely. And I can say with reasonable amount of pride that we have made significant progress here. And how do you make this progress? You make this progress by making everyone, so functional priority alignment, everyone knows what they have to give to the other person. So that's at the core. This is taken down, level 1, level 2. And then you work a lot on helping people resolve conflict in a collaborative manner. So crucial conversations, workshops, and again, storytelling, again, getting leaders to say, the two of you don't work together is not good enough. And don't come to me for resolution. If you're coming to me for resolution, I'll help you with the tools that are required to handle that conflict. But the tools, you have to work it together. When the two leaders work it together, the people under them also work together. So we do, so in the year-end, we have got what I call an executive council.
Mm-hmm.
In that executive council, so the top 50 leaders come and each function presents.
Correct.
And each function has to present very simply what they did well, what they didn't do well, and therefore they're going to work on the next year. Simple.
Yeah.
Over a period of time, people understand ki, मैं तो समझता था कि फाइनेंस वाले कुछ काम ही नहीं करते, इतना काम करते हैं। and
Absolutely.
then and then they go and then they go and tell it to their teams. So first time one of their people complains against finance, that guy will, or that person will say, no, actually finance is doing a good job. So that is one thing. And at the end of each person's presentation, this is evolved organically. There is an award that that function gives.
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 people, or 1, 2 or 3, whatever, X number of people
Okay.
from other functions who have helped their function.
Oh, awesome.
So
That sounds.
they don't nominate their people in their own function.
Oh,
So
okay.
I want to recognize ABC from finance, who's helped me in this journey.
Okay.
Finance person is saying, I want to recognize someone in supply chain. We had a problem on inventory valuation. This is how
Right.
they did it. So, these are the small building blocks
Correct.
to what we discussed just now, that this drives collaboration. If this drives collaboration culture over a period of time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to perhaps the last thing that I would love to hear from you in terms of the learning and development aspect, and how do you kind of in Sapphire Foods use that to really, because for any employee, when it's like you were talking about the things that really attracts an employee to an organization, what the learning and development is one such thing. They aspire to learn, grow, and become better people, better professionals. So how do you go about that?
So part of learning and development is having really good objective setting.
Correct.
And the over the last, I would say 2-3 years, one of the things that I say to people also is that, first of all, development is in an individual's hands. And much of development occurs, as the old adage goes, 70% or 90% on the job and 10%
On the
in
job.
the classroom.
Correct.
Isn't it? So something in your job must enable you to learn and grow. Okay.
Correct.
So in most objective sheets, year-end sheets, there's something called a personal development plan. Now,
Okay.
I remember when I had to fill it as a first time or second time manager, I used to also struggle to fill this for my people. What is it, this personal development plan? How do you fill it? Well, till I got to this simple articulation of a personal development plan. And I encourage each individual to work it out for themselves. One is work with your boss or work with your manager to say, what will make you more effective in your current role? So that is one. Number two is, what is your aspiration? So 1 year, 2 year down the line, what is your aspiration? So perhaps a supply chain person who's handling procurement will say, my aspiration is to become a supply chain head, I must know quality, I must know planning, I must know apart from, say, procurement. So is there anything that one can do to prepare oneself for the next role?
Right.
I'll give a easier example. Operations manager typically handles 40 or 50 stores.
Right.
The next step to an operations manager is the COO of a region.
Okay.
The operations manager, we might have 10, 12, 15 of them. They aspire to 3 roles.
Okay.
So I'm telling each one of them, do you know what it takes for you to become a COO? what are the things that a COO does that you don't do today? Can you jot them down? And
Correct.
can you start working on that over the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, doesn't mind. And in your mind, think yourself today itself as a COO, COO of the region. Now shadow your boss. What are the things that they do, or what are the things that he or she does, and what can I start to learn? And so it's a combination of two things. One is what will make a person more effective in the current role? What is their aspiration? And to achieve that aspiration, what a person needs to be doing, reflected in a objective, which is part of his or her objective sheet for the year. I think this is the best way to do development. And then I'm saying we spend, I would think, so at the store level, there's a lot of training
and stuff. Yeah.
Lot of that goes.
Correct.
But at the corporate level, and especially at middle senior management level, a large part of development is this. And then when a person shows that adaptability, can you give him or her other roles to develop?
So I would believe a lot of mentoring goes in, and a lot of kind of, maybe not formal, but a lot of mentoring is what I heard you talking about.
So it's the mentoring is, I'm saying, the boss enabling through normal, when I mean normal processes that we follow, to enable a person to work out what that development objective is. In a sense, the other thing that I'm doing for the last 2 years is what I've branded Masterclass with Sanjay. So I say, it's a branding device, but
you are a marketing guy.
So what I do is, with my leadership team, in any case, I have a formal set of reviews and so on and so forth. I felt the need to reach out to the direct reports of
the skip level. Okay.
And I have conversations with them exactly on this.
Okay.
So tell me what your objectives are. Which of your objectives is helping you grow to the next level?
Awesome.
And I just find those conversations, so really, everyone is bright enough to figure out कि अरे मेरे को ये करना है, तो मैं
absolutely
do it. The idea is to guide a person to say, this is what you have to work on. And you're working on not for the organization or anything. You're working on to improve yourself.
Self-development, correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So perhaps it's a very simplistic way that I've
as long as it is effective, and that's what I really, by the way I look at learning and development, is more from the effectiveness rather than the tick mark activities of sending people to training programs and X number of hours locked in on development. I really, and that's an approach I've seen a lot of organizations take, but I really don't know how effective they are. Sanjay, we could go on and on. I have a lot many questions, but I'm sure you are a busy person. You would need to get back to your busy schedule. I'm going to request you to very quickly, for the benefit of the audience, recap or maybe list out 4 or 5 key elements of success to build a great and a positive and a vibrant workplace.
So it first starts with you yourself, is how I put it. And for you to identify how you behave on an everyday basis. And you can be sure, if you're a team leader, that is going to be the subculture of your team.
Okay.
So self-awareness about how you lead and how you behave, very important. If the leader can't resolve conflict with their peers, it is impossible for people under them to resolve conflict with other people. I think it really boils down to this, everything. Each individual person becomes a good people person, in a sense, affords the kind of dignity and respect, handles conflict. I think culture starts with the leader, but is reinforced and permeated by every single person in the organization.
Absolutely.
I think that's the only thing that I say. In my career, I found the 5 values helping people take decisions, because I've enumerated it as explicitly as this. It helps people take decisions. And I was just giving you an example of what happened just prior to our conversation, where we had a real
difficult meeting.
Difficult meeting to decide on a on a people issue.
People issue. Yeah.
And we went back to the values, saying that is the decision in accordance with the values. So I think, first of all, knowing yourself, this is the brand of leadership that you will put forth. If there are areas that you need to work on, you have to work on. And then you can, then if you are explicit about what you expect, and over a period of time, I'm sure that becomes culture.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sanjay. It was a real pleasure and a privilege firstly to have you here on our podcast, listening into you, a lot of learnings, and I'm sure the audience would definitely take a lot of, I would say, inputs from you in terms of building their own organization and the culture in their organization. Thank you so much, and we look forward to continuing to interact with you in the future as well. This is just the beginning for us, our first ever episode. Now, hopefully, we will. Our aspiration is to grow big, and with the help and support of people like you, I'm sure we'll get there. So, thank you so much, Sanjay.
And thank you, Shailesh. And it'll be remiss of me to not congratulate you on your 10-year journey as an entrepreneur. And I've perhaps had one small corner ringside view of the trials and tribulations that you have gone through. So, and where you've ended today, I'm sure you should be proud of yourself. I look at your journey and say, my word, what an outstanding journey. And I hope 10 years morphs into 100 years over a period of time, and you build an institution that lasts beyond you. So all the very best to you.
Thank you
for having me here.
Thank you.